Good afternoon. I'm your host, Professor Kayvon, not Kevin, Hatamzadeh, and this is a special presentation of Group 2 News. Tonight's report will highlight a company that was taken from an undergraduate paper and turned into a Fortune 500 company. We'll go through the various business strategies, its structure, and do a SWOT analysis along with other factors of the company. This company is none other than Federal Express. In 1965, while attending Yale, Frederick Smith wrote a paper for one of his undergraduate courses. He detailed how a parcel company could deliver time-sensitive packages within a 24-hour period. His professor scoffed at this idea. After graduating from Yale and a short stint in the military, Smith went out and bought Little Rock Aviation Sales in 1971. While operating this, he saw the inefficiencies within the company. He set out to strive for what he wrote in his 1965 paper at Yale University. The time-sensitive packages. Now, the name Federal Express is what he came up with. He liked the fact that it had a patriotic sense, and he also wanted to gain the Federal Reserve's business. Then, soon after, he moved the company's headquarters from Little Rock to Memphis, Tennessee, and they started operations on April 17, 1973. By the 1980s, revenues were growing compoundingly by 40% annually. Now, by 1983, Federal Express became the first startup without any mergers and acquisitions to reach $1 billion in revenues. Now, that's an impressive feat. Throughout the years, the company acquired many different business units, which we will learn about tonight. Now, we turn to a macro-environmental analysis of Federal Express. Federal Express is heavily engaged in the political legal spectrum. They engage in lobbying. They give campaign contributions. They have strong ties to the White House and Congress. It's the nature of the business. There are governmental agency moves and legislation that affect their business, and they need to be involved. For example, in 2001, the United States Postal Service transferred all of their overnight deliveries over to Federal Express. This past year, Congress decided to raise the duty-free rate for imported goods from $200 to $800. This allows U.S. customers to bring in or ship in goods from other countries without being taxed. Obviously good for FedEx. On the adverse side of things, any regulations in aviation or green energy initiatives could put downward pressure on FedEx operating margins because of the heavy capital expenditures in these areas. Now, FedEx is also engaged in a lot of litigation. They most recently settled a case for over $250 million in the federal courts of Northern California with FedEx Freight employees. They always face various amounts of litigation, whether it's employment law or whether it's compliance laws. And that is why FedEx is heavily involved in the political legal side of things. From a macroeconomic perspective, Federal Express is heavily influenced by consumer spending. Now, let's look at the Federal Reserve's quantitative easing policy. This has allowed the flow of money into the economy, thus increasing consumer spending, and we've seen job growth over the past quarters. These have all been good economic signs for Federal Express. However, the rising US dollar does pose a threat. This is because most of their transactions overseas are denominated in the US dollar. This provides an opportunity for foreign competitors to offer lower rates to customers, thus taking away business and driving down demand for Federal Express services. In the area of technology, which has been the key driver of the 21st century, Federal Express has had a lot to gain from this movement. But there's also threats lurking out there. Now, tech advancements with their shipment tracking has really helped them become a more efficient company and give better data to customers. Now, they've also made some green energy initiatives. By 2017, they expect to have a fleet of their jets to be running on algae and tree pulp rather than jet fuel. This is a great innovation for FedEx and their green energy initiatives. However, they also face threats from companies like Amazon trying to offer their Amazon Prime Air by delivering same-day packages using drones, which is a cheaper method. FedEx must keep up with the technological advancements to survive. In the social realm of things, there has been the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good being e-commerce. People are going online and purchasing their goods there and using FedEx to ship it to their homes. Also, in social media, people can go on there and give positive reviews and helping Federal Express's PR image. Now, on the bad side of things, customers could go out and express their negative thoughts of FedEx, which is obviously a public relations nightmare. And the ugly. Watch this video and you'll see what I'm talking about. Obviously, not good for FedEx. A video like this can and will go viral, giving them a complete PR nightmare. Let's now move into a quick analysis of the courier services industry. Looking at the threats of entry, they are relatively low. This is primarily associated to the high barriers of entry, especially in the areas of government regulation on aviation, and also the high fixed costs of operations and the shipping network. Moving on to the intensity of rivalry among competitors, we see it as very high. This is due to the consolidated nature. Your main three players are UPS, FedEx, and the European-based DHL. These companies are constantly competing at a very high rate to get the customers. The company that reduces costs and innovates will lead the industry. The pressure from substitute products is relatively low because the substitute products would only be in their method of delivery. The only feasible threat currently is Amazon Prime Air's drone services, and that is a far ways off. We now arrive to the bargaining power of buyers, which is moderate. This is due to the consolidated nature of the industry. Your three main companies are competing for business of the buyers, therefore giving the power to your buyers. And finally, your bargaining powers of suppliers, which in the general sense of things is relatively low. Your companies in the packing materials, vehicles, planes, and equipment industry have a high intensity of rivalry, and the courier services industry companies don't have a preference on who they use, just on costs and accountability. Therefore, their bargaining power of suppliers is reduced. We now would like to bring in Professor Jackson Botto, one of our senior analysts, to give us some more insight on FedEx.
All right, thanks, Professor K. The mission statement of a company should encompass all of the values and goals that the company is currently striving to achieve. It is created to summarize the growth and satisfaction efforts of the stakeholders of the company. As of 2016, FedEx mission statement reads, FedEx Corp will produce superior financial returns for its shareowners by providing high value-added logistics, transportation, and business-related services through focused operating companies. Customer requirements will be met in the highest quality manner, appropriate to each market segment served. FedEx will strive to develop mutually rewarding relationships with its employees, partners, and suppliers. Safety will be the first consideration in all operations. corporate activities will be conducted to the highest ethical and professional standards.
Having heard the mission statement, could you give us some insight on Federal Express's goals?
Sure thing, Professor K.
Professor Bato, it's Professor Kayvon.
Right. So, Professor K. FedEx has several long-term goals that are implemented to give aim towards future growth. First is trying to achieve 10% plus operating margin. Almost tipping the 10% mark last year, the FedEx team is able to adjust it to where it's steadily increasing. The second long-term goal is to increase earnings per share by 10 to 15% per year. It is up by 27% from last year, and making a huge acquisition like Genco will allow FedEx to tap into even greater goals. The third long-term goal is to continue to grow its profitable revenue. With revenues up by 4% from last year, FedEx was the highest used supplier during the crucial holiday season. Attempting to trump its rival UPS, FedEx has started to transport larger objects such as boats and building equipment more frequently, resulting in the underestimated $47.5 billion. The last long-term goal is to increase cash flow, return on invested capital, and return to shareholders to help everyone in relation to the company. A recent accounting change to recognize actuarial gains and losses immediately was implemented last year, and this single change will allow all these factors to increase.
Now, Professor Bato, with these long-term goals in mind, current term goals satisfaction are also important, which leads us to ask, what do the stakeholders want?
That's a great question, Professor K.
For the love of God, it's Professor Kayvon.
Professor K, right?
Just go.
Before we know the answer, we must note that FedEx released its 2016 Global Citizenship Report. This 115-page document informs everyone of the tremendous job that FedEx does at contributing to the environment, connecting communities across the world, and providing safety and leadership to less fortunate areas. The Global Citizen Report also highlights the goals of each stakeholder. As a customer, the main goal is to know when your package will be delivered and actually receiving the package without problems. As a member of the general public, it's important to know that a big company like FedEx is continuing to help the economy, the environment, and the people across the globe. For suppliers, the main goal is to not allow FedEx to deceive them while maintaining a reasonable profit margin. As for employees of FedEx, one should expect equitable compensation, safety standards, and proper career benefits such as insurance, pension plans, and promotion opportunities. As a creditor, the goal is to get FedEx to make the best use of the provided capital so they can get paid. As a stockholder, there's one goal, to increase the value of the stock so they'll want to buy more. And as a member of the board of the directors, FedEx should give proper respect and make sure that other stakeholders are properly satisfied to avoid random lawsuits. And also as a manager, the goal is to be properly compensated while being able to delegate tasks to your other employees and still be rewarded for increasing productivity.
Thank you very much for your insight, Professor Bato. And for further references, please try to learn my name.
I'll try.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we turn to Professor Calloway, our Senior Corporate Level Strategies Analyst, to give us some insight on how FedEx operates.
Thank you, Professor Kevin. This is Reeves Calloway here, the Senior Level Corporate Level Strategies Analyst. Today we're talking about FedEx. First things first, FedEx is definitely not in a state to need a stability or a retrenchment strategy. They're definitely growing. They're growing internally and externally. Internally, they're doing things like modernizing their air fleet to save on shipping costs and better fuel efficiency. For ground, they're spending a lot of money on global sourcing programs to make sure that even though they may not be delivering the most packages on the ground, they want to deliver the fastest.
And how about externally, Professor Calloway?
I'm glad you mentioned that, Professor Kevin. FedEx is growing externally as well. They recently horizontally integrated with TNT Express to expand their global network and grow some profits over in Europe as well to compete with UPS. They also practiced an example of horizontal unrelated diversification in 2004 with Kinko's. This allowed them to heavily grow their retail presence globally, which made them the first option for businesses and companies already doing business with Kinko's. So they became that first delivery option at a low price. So it was a good matchup for them. And lastly, they practiced vertical integration of an unrelated business with Genco, which is a third-party logistics company. When they came in, they found that FedEx was spending too much time and effort on only the logistics for high-ticket items such as medical equipment. So they brought Genco in to really do some reverse logistics and what to do with returns, to really set in stone how they were going to do those return policies so they can say that FedEx is the best with their returns and everything like that. So really there's once again no need for FedEx to be stable or to practice retrenchment strategies. They are growing.
We now turn to our Senior Business Unit Strategies Analyst, Professor Schaefer.
Thank you, Professor Cavan. My name is Professor Schaefer. Today I'm going to be talking about the FedEx business units. So FedEx Express is the business unit that's responsible for international and air shipments. It practices a mixed strategy of low cost differentiation and low cost. The emphasis of Express is to have high quality at low costs. It has a market coverage of wide, serving many customers. Express services are differentiated in character, have elastic demand, and are priced from average to high. Now, FedEx Ground, on the other hand, is the unit that's responsible for the ground shipments in the United States. It practices a mixed strategy of niche low cost and differentiation. The emphasis of Ground is to keep the costs low. It has a niche market coverage because it serves only the U.S. Like Express, the services are differentiated in character, have elastic demand, and are priced from average to high. The last business unit is FedEx Freight. Freight is responsible for all of the less than truckload and commercial services. This unit has a mixed strategy of low cost and differentiation. It emphasizes high quality, has a market-wide reach, and it has differentiated services. It's a unique service in that demand is elastic in terms of time, but inelastic in terms of cost. And the prices are also average to high.
Now, understanding this, could you give us some insight on how these business units interrelate and a little bit about the corporate structure of Federal Express?
Thank you for asking that, Kayvon. So FedEx is unique in that it only has 5 functions rather than 6 like most companies. There's purchasing, inventory, research development, marketing, and accounting and finance. Manufacturing really isn't a component because this is a service industry. Purchasing is going to buy the best capital they can at the most reasonable price, of course. Inventory is going to carry high costs and many locations because of the volume of packages that FedEx processes. Research and development is obviously going to focus on process improvements rather than product improvements. Marketing and accounting are pretty much going to hold an even control in the company because FedEx needs to keep costs low while maintaining high quality and good relationships with their customers. Now, in terms of structure, FedEx is a mixture of a tall and flat because they're providing differentiated services like in a short structure, but they have a lot of supervision as a tall structure would. This is evident in their high quality. It also has a multi-divisional structure, and this is evident in that it's structured by service brand rather than products and stuff like that.
Thank you so much for your insights. You've been a great help. You have a great day.
All right, thank you, Professor Kayvon, for having me. It was a pleasure.
And for our final segment tonight, we turn to one of the world's foremost experts on the SWOT analysis, Professor Nikki Stokes. I had the opportunity to sit down with Professor Stokes and have a conversation with him about the different business units' strengths and opportunities, and then Federal Express's overall weaknesses, threats, opportunities, the whole SWOT analysis. Let's hear what he has to say. Could you take us through some of the strengths and opportunities that FedEx Ground poses?
Yes, I can, Professor Kevin. Okay, Grounds has a total of 90,000 team members. Grounds delivers 7.5 million packages daily. They have 45,000 vehicles, 33 hubs, and 500 pickup and drop-off stations. Grounds have become faster, to more locations than UPS due to improvements made in transit time.
And could you run us through FedEx Freight's strengths and opportunities?
Okay, so Freight makes deliveries to the U.S., Canada, Mexico, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. Their average daily shipment is around 97,000. They have 39,000 team members, 20,000 vehicles, and 370 services centers at their disposal.
And then I asked Mr. Stokes about his thoughts on FedEx Express.
Well, on average, Express deals with 4 million packages daily and 11 million pounds of freight daily. Express has 165,000 team members, 675 aircrafts, 48,500 vehicles, and 775 world centers. Express plans to improve by increasing profitability and gaining long viability by improving efficiency of staff functions and processes, modernizing their air fleet, and adjusting to domestic networks.
And what are your thoughts on FedEx Services?
Well, services acts as a support for the other 3 business units. They have 12,000 team members. Services specialize in data management, networking expertise, solution design, customer support, sales and marketing, and information technology.
Now we have Professor Stokes with us live to run us through the SWOT analysis.
Some of FedEx strengths are strong brand name, strong revenue growth, and large investments in IT systems. Some of FedEx weaknesses are increasing operating costs, independent of U.S. market. Some of the opportunities are mergers and acquisitions and growing freight transportation industry. Some of the threats will be fuel price, seasonality of business, and foreign exchange risk.
Thank you for your insight, Professor Stokes.
Thanks for having me.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight as we conclude our analysis of FedEx. We hope you've learned a lot, and we hope that you take something back with you. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us in any way or fashion. Coming to you live from Memphis, Tennessee, I'm your host, Kayvon, not Kevin, at times of death, and God bless you all. Good night.